Unlike science, which sees it as a challenge, religion thrives on unsolved mystery. For early humanity, what was mysterious and unexplained was so vast that only an equally vast higher being, an alpha male in the sky, could fill that gap.
How would our ancestors have responded to the sunrise? There must be a fiery charioteer, a sun god to accept our sacrifices, a supreme being who, on the first day of creation, announced, "Let there be light."
But scientific investigation has rolled back that mystery. Today we know the sun is a giant nuclear reactor, one of billions of stars pumping out electromagnetic radiation, heat and light. How do scientists know the things that they know about the world and the universe? How do we know, for instance, that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and that it orbits the sun that nourishes it?
How do we know that these dinosaurs are hundreds of millions of years old? The answer is evidence. Tons and tons of mutually supporting evidence.
Science is about testing, comparing and corroborating this mass of evidence, and using it to update old theories of how things work.
I do remember one formative influence in my undergraduate life. There was an elderly professor in my department who had been passionately keen on a particular theory for, a number of years. And one day an American visiting researcher came and he completely and utterly disproved our old man's hypothesis. The old man strode to the front, shook his hand and said, "My dear fellow, I wish to thank you. I have been wrong these 15 years. And we all clapped our hands raw. That was the scientific ideal of somebody who had a lot invested, a lifetime almost invested in the theory. And he was rejoicing that he had been shown wrong and that scientific truth had been advanced.
Okay, well, who said that? Let me hear another person's perspective. All right. You're welcome to, maybe we'll have some time for conversation at the end. The idea, again, this is an ideal of science. I'm sure that science doesn't always work like this. I'm sure that often scientists probably falsify their experiments to get funding and all the rest. But the idea of science is this one. How can I get out of here? Oh, okay. So, what was Dawkins' point, if you want to go along with him for a minute? What is science, how does science try to arrive at the truth? Okay. And what was so saintly about this professor that Dawkins had back at university? Well, that didn't actually happen. He didn't believe in God and then he started believing in evolution. But he did believe in something, right? He had a pet theory that he wanted to be true, that he'd spent 15 years working on. And then what happened when this American came to London or wherever it was, and proved that he was actually wrong? Did you follow what he was saying there?
Yeah. He was actually happy that he was proven wrong because it meant that the knowledge was being advanced more.
Good.
That was the whole point of having a theory, that is to gain knowledge.
Okay.
If your theory is proven wrong because somebody else has found more information on it, well then it's progressing the species, progressing more knowledge.
I don't know if you could hear, but it said he was happy to be proven wrong because it's progressing knowledge, and his ideal is to progress knowledge and have more information, more knowledge, even if it's his pet theory that has to go by the wayside. Is that how religion works?
Right.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. So once again, I want you to focus on this idea of falsification because it's very important for science, and it's usually not that important for religion. In science, you want to try to falsify claims, okay? You want to make sure that you want to try to falsify your ideas so that you can see whether they hold up or not. And you're willing to have them falsified because you want to know what's true, what's really going on. As I say here, you can look into this. I think it's talked about in the other article, the Sense of the Universe article, Karl Popper talking about falsification. But basically, I won't talk about them too much. But let's try and see how much of this we can figure out. Let's imagine whether these are falsifiable questions or not, okay? So which one of these are scientific, which means that you can imagine the circumstances under which you would be able to falsify them. You following me? All swans are white. Is that a scientific claim?
No. All swans are not white.
Okay, is it a scientific claim? That means, can it be falsified?
Yes.
Good, excellent. Okay, all swans are white. All you have to do is find a non-white swan, and then you falsify it. Maybe they are all white. They're not actually, but it would be possible. There are no fossilized mammals before 220 million years ago. What's that? Is that a scientific claim? Okay, what would prove that it was false?
If we found some things that was before that.
Good. If we found a fossil of a mammal from 500 million years ago, not very likely, but that would falsify it. There is no God. Is that a scientific claim?
No.
No.
Why not?
It can't be proven wrong.
You can't really falsify that.
How would you have to falsify it if you could?
I mean, no, I don't know. You have to find out.
You'd have to find God, and you'd have to look through the whole universe and everywhere else to make sure that God wasn't hiding there. Okay? So in a sense, all of these can be considered scientific and falsifiable in some world that we can't imagine. We're trying to imagine the world we live in, or the world we can imagine coming, where we would have a technology that would allow us to look at something or see by evidence whether it's true or false. It has to be able to be falsified by evidence for it to be scientific. Jesus hates homosexuality. Is that a scientific claim? It's on a shirt somewhere. That doesn't make a scientific claim, right? Okay. Slips of the tongue reveal your unconscious thoughts. Anybody remember that?
Yep.
Who's that? Sigmund Freud. Good. Okay. So is that a scientific claim?
Yes. This could be proven.
Well, what would the evidence be that would prove that it was false? See, there's a problem with this one because unconscious thoughts are unconscious. And that's what people don't like Freud's theory say. So there's really no way of getting into the unconscious thought to prove whether it's being revealed by the slip of the tongue. And Freud will just say, whatever you say, oh, you're just repressing it, or whatever, that you just, you don't realize that you have this thought. You do want your father's penis or whatever, but you don't realize it. It's repressed, okay? That's not a science. In other words, Freud was not a scientist, okay? He wanted to be a scientist, but most people would say he was not a scientist because in making a claim like that, he's making a claim that really can't be disproved by evidence. There's no access to the unconscious that would allow us. If it's unconscious, it's not conscious. We can't really see it. It might be true, what he said, and it might be plausible, and it might make sense, but it's not a scientific claim. Are you following me? What's that?
What if we can make a machine that could look at it?
What if we can make a machine? Well, that's just it. If we could create a telephone to call God, then we could start falsifying or approving some of these ideas. And if we could make a telescope that showed us our unconscious thoughts, or made them conscious somehow, then it's possible, I guess, that technology could advance to the point where we could falsify some of these claims. Right now, they're not falsifiable. Jazz is better than country music. Absolutely. And the moon is made of ether, and the planets travel on crystal spheres. Who said that? Oprah. Close. Kind of the Oprah of his day. Anybody remember who said this? Aristotle. Good. Okay, Aristotle, right? Is that a scientific claim?
Yes.
It was proven wrong, and you can imagine how it would be proven wrong. You go out and you look at the crystal sphere, and if it's not there, you've proven that it's wrong. So that's a scientific claim. So falsifiability in science. It's a way of deciding whether something is science or not, whether it can be falsified or not. If it can't be falsified, it's not science. All right?